Welcome to the Talking Reliability podcast, where the future of maintenance meets the power of sound. Hosted by Chris Hallum from UE Systems, we're diving deep into the world of predictive maintenance, asset reliability, and cutting-edge ultrasound technology. Whether you're on the plant floor or leading reliability strategies, pull up a chair, or better yet, grab your hard hat, because we're bringing you real talk, real stories, and real insights from the experts who keep industries running. Let's crank up the volume on reliability.
Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Talking Reliability. I'm on my travels this week in Florida, attending the Leading Reliability event. So I thought while I was here, I might as well do a Florida-style podcast episode with my good friend Jeremy Bey from UE Team North America. So Jeremy works with me as one of the strategic accounts leaders in UE Systems, and we work quite closely a lot of the time on a lot of high-level programs supporting our customers to make sure that their CBM programs are working to a good standard. So welcome, Jeremy. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Good. It's absolutely always a pleasure. Me and Jeremy go back a long way. Both ex-military guys, Air Force, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yep. So yeah,
similar backgrounds. We both come from the training background and military. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, before we start, I'd like to let Jeremy introduce himself to you guys, so you get to know who Jeremy is as well.
Okay. Well, again, thanks for having me. So my background is, like we mentioned, I started out in the military with Chris. I have a training background there. I've been with UE now about 14 years. Started out with UE in the sales side, and then went to the training side, and then now I'm working with the enterprise accounts, the large accounts. And basically working on large-scale implementations across multiple sites and all the little pieces that kind of go into it and make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's one of the key things around any sort of CBM program is communication, especially when it's more than one site. And it's something that me and Jeremy almost do on a weekly basis, really, isn't it, for some of our accounts?
Yep, absolutely. And that's one thing I think we've learned over our trial and errors is, the more we communicate with the sites and communicate back with each other, the better things work.
Absolutely. And we see this, especially with some customers where they have sites in North America, UK, maybe in mainland Europe, with the language barriers and things like that, the changing cultures. It's really important to have vendors that can have that sort of reach in those areas to make sure that the right messaging is put across, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of times we look at it as a customer, if they have multiple sites, but it's all going to be a copy and paste, one size fits all approach. But like you mentioned, the different nuances there with, globally and even regionally, it definitely requires a little special touch in the communication and make sure we understand that and are able to align with that.
No, absolutely. I mean, we could talk for hours on how you build a strategic CBM program across multiple sites, but we're going to try and cut to the sort of high level side of things here. What are the first things that we need to really think about to make sure things are a success? Because in our time, we've both seen the good things and the bad things, haven't we?
Sure have.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jeremy, when we sort of look at these sort of things, where do you normally suggest to a customer when they're thinking about, looking at multiple sites across different areas? What sort of things are you sort of talking with them about first of all to consider?
Really, what first thing we really ask them to do is really get an alignment together at the top and get a good plan in place of what are they trying to do, but also what are they trying to accomplish? What's the goal that they want to get? And is it a feasible goal? But from there, really, we have to have the plan from the top, and then we have to kind of work our way down from the bottom to get that buy-in. And I think the buy-in is really critical in order to get it to even kick off from the start.
It's that old adage with anything reliability, isn't it? It's culture. It's making sure that you've got that right culture in place before you start anything off, realistically.
Absolutely. And folks don't like change.
No, we don't. We don't like change.
None of us do.
No, so. But change is good. Change is good. So you will probably hear some planes in the background and some birds, I'd imagine. But bear with us. It's part of the ambience on the Florida-style podcast we're doing.
That's right.
So yeah, but back to the topic. Communication is key, getting that culture in there. And normally, when I've seen it in Europe, and when we've been doing these, we've kind of looked at a company where they say, for example, have 15, 16 plants across different places. And in the past, what I've seemed to have done is looked at a central team within that organization that can kind of put together that plan. And then they can kind of control the best practices and stipulate that throughout the organization. I think we see that over here too, don't we?
Yeah, that's a good point too, because we mentioned getting the plan together at the top, but I think, like you said, you have to have that core team to really almost the ones to execute the plan, right, and drive things along and communicate with the field and everything there. But I think, that core team is really critical, because if you don't have folks that are focused on the implementation, on the program itself, and all those little pieces that go together. It's really hard to get it all to work across multiple sites like that.
No, absolutely. I think I had an example a few years ago where we had multiple sites around different locations within mainland Europe, and there was a central team that was responsible for the whole network as such. And what they did was they had a plan, they had a vision of what they wanted to do. Now, if they would have just transmitted that vision out to the sites, without the sites understanding, what that vision was themselves or seeing it for themselves, it's hard for them to get that buy-in. And what they did actually was arrange that all of those plant managers get together with UE and myself and be able to actually share the vision with them and let them see it in practice. When that was then seen and everyone could see the benefits behind it, when the plan was then transmitted and communicated through the network, it was easier to then deploy that as such. I think you see those sort of things over here as well, do you?
Absolutely, and we've trial by error. We've tried it before of not necessarily having a team, just having a couple people try to push that. But unless you have that core team that really drives it in, it's almost impossible to really get a program to stick. It'll take off initially, but in order for it to be sustainable, I think that's the key for it.
Yeah, you see it quite often where you might see somebody in a plant that's really keen, really ambitious, wants that drive and tries to make something happen, but they've kind of done it alone. And they've made some successes, but other people around there haven't shared in those successes and maybe are not so willing to buy into that. And you see it fall over as such. We've seen it as well with a key thing of this side of things is any sort of CBM program that you put in place, any form of predictive maintenance is getting those work orders into the CMMS to make sure that the work is done. I mean, how many times have you seen that happen where they haven't done that? It starts well, and then over time, it just falls off that cliff.
Right. And that's the thing with maintenance folks that we have to understand is from the vendor side is they're busy, that their only job isn't doing ultrasound routes or collecting data with it. It has to be easy and part of their job is fixing things as they break, and that's their goal. So they don't have time to go out and do a ton of data collection. It has to be efficient and quick for them. Yeah, and makes sense. So the key to that is, like you said, is having that in the work order program and have it logged and tracked, and there it's automatic. It's not something that somebody can forget to do and we'll get to it the next day or next week and push that off, and things start getting pencil whipped then.
And that's the key thing about improving, the overall equipment effectiveness of these plants is that a lot of these plants across multiple locations will have the same type of assets, and they will experience the same sort of failures, I'm sure as well. And that if they're monitoring that and recording that data, they can then highlight and identify maybe key fault areas on certain assets that they can then all collaborate with and actually find better resolutions to those sort of things. And it just goes back to communication again, almost in a way, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Having those KPIs, having those forced metrics to encourage the actual work to be done on that front as well.
No, and that's key too, because having something to bank off of and say this site has had success using it, because everyone, they see the challenges, the hurdles there, and it worked well at one site, but they don't think it can happen at theirs. So they like having those experiences from other folks that are out there turning wrenches with them and can relate to them.
This is it. And I mean, you're a trainer, Jeremy. I'm a trainer. We've been there. It's one of our favorite things to talk about. I mean, I think the key thing with all of this as well is that, ultrasound is one technology. There's going to be other technologies that need to come into the CBM program because not one technology fits all. But one of the most important things, I think, with this as well is standardized training.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something we've seen, and even recently that we're kind of working on cleaning up right now, right, is, things take off with good intentions, and then things start getting saturated and misinterpreted different ways, and all of a sudden, it's like the game of telephone when you're a kid. You start listening to it, and the message starts changing, ever so subtly, but then all of a sudden it's off on a completely different track. So the standardized training is key, especially one of the big challenges that we see is turnover, right? We don't see people staying at a place for 20 years anymore. So if you have somebody, in 2 or 3 years turning over, you have whole new folks needing trained and everything. So there has to be some standardization in order, to where it's just turnkey and get people ready to go.
That's it. And I think we've had some customers as well that have done this quite well, where as part of the sort of the hardware and maintenance standards, they have then the training standards. Yep. So then they'll stipulate that every site needs to have a certain percentage of people trained to a certain level, and another maybe senior people trained to another level. So that when you have that turnover issue, then those metrics are still recorded. So if they lose people or people move on or get promoted, then as people come back in, they have to then fill that again and then keep that training going. Because like you say, We've seen other companies in the past where they've created their own SME teams in the past, and those people then it's like Chinese whispers. They teach one guy something here, and then something gets missed on the next one, and on the next one, and they can go around implementing that. But if the people on that site aren't trained, I think you've seen that too, haven't we?
Oh, we see it a lot.
Yeah, we've seen those things. Yep. So training is a very important side of things.
It's well, and something with that too is the standardized training is it as the company's needs change, the core of what you're doing as far as collecting data is the same, and that's the things we have to stay focused on that. And then all the nuances that come in with the site changes and safety and things like that come in, that can all be, molded for that, but it has to start with that standardized training so everyone knows the right thing to start off with.
Yeah. And once we've got that in place as well, documentation.
Yeah.
One of our favorite things at the moment has been helping our customers creating things like PDM handbooks, we call them. It's almost like a CBM Bible for people to use, so that you can have that across every site, so everybody knows exactly what's being done, how it's being done, and when to do it. And if you look at multinational organizations, not everyone speaks English. We're fortunate enough that we understand what we're talking about. But if we go into some regions, it's not so easy to do that. Right. So we've translated PDM handbooks into all sorts of languages.
Several.
And that helps then keeping that standardization when there is a language barrier.
Yep, absolutely. And one thing about that handbook though too is you have to think of it as a working document. You're going to start off your program and you're going to have a vision there, but your program will change and it will adapt as time goes on. So I think you have to make sure that document's a working document. You have to have regular updates and things to that instead of just, we've seen it before. I think most recently we had a customer that had one and it was about 11 years old, right? So it had good intentions, but things have changed. So it needs to be updated and doing that. And that's what we're working through right now. And we're seeing a lot of substantial changes there just from having that standardization, and it gets everybody with a clear picture moving forward.
Absolutely. And I mean, we help them with building the ultrasound side of these PDM handbooks, but we bring in other vendors and work with other vendors to actually add all of the other technologies that they're using as well. Make it one holistic document, because, it's a partnership with these sort of organizations. And, we're not there just to go and do what's needed. We want to make sure that it's a success. Because it reflects on ourselves and everything else, and we take pride in the work that we do. We wouldn't have been in UE for 10 plus years, each of us, if we didn't actually care about what we did.
That's right.
So I mean, it's multifaceted, a CBM program like this. And like I say, collaborating the data into one sort of area is also very key. Getting that documentation in place, getting your work orders in. Work orders are one of the key things to getting a CBM program off the ground.
Absolutely.
But it takes time as well, doesn't it?
It takes time. It's not going to happen overnight.
How many times have you had a customer say, right, I want to roll this out across 100 sites and I want it complete in the next 6 months?
Yep. It's typically, we want this done before our peak period, whenever that comes up. Every company kind of has a peak time, and usually it's 6 months before that is when they're scrambling to try to get things ready for that. And really it needs to be a thought out plan that it's going to take some time to implement.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we've said it many times when somebody says those sort of things, we're kind of, look, to build a strong reliability program, it takes time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that need to be put in place, a lot of steady steps to get the buy-in. You've got senior management, procurement, accounts, HR, environmental, maintenance, engineering departments. There's so many people that you have to bring in together to actually make this a proper program. Because if you're going to accounts with a budget request of X million, they're going to ask you, well, what's this for?
Right.
You've got to bring them in, haven't you, as well? And that's where we do those conversations with those departments.
One key essential thing too that I don't think we've mentioned yet is it has to be the right person. You almost need a salesperson within your team to kind of get the buy-in, and we call them like the hype man. Right? You have to have the hype man who gets people excited about it, because it's not the most exciting thing, data collection, and a lot of times, it's thought of as an extra task or chore, but really having the right person that's excited about it and explaining the benefits of what are we getting out of this program, why are we starting this program, to begin with, and then celebrating those little wins along the way.
Yeah,
is important.
I think you're absolutely right there. And I had that with a recent customer actually, where we actually spoke with them about having the right people for the right job. And you can implement something like this, and you could have members of your team that are not really that interested, and they're going along for the training because they've been told to, and things like that. And something my trainers in our team have done in the past as well is then give feedback after the training to the customer to say, hey, this guy over here, he was really keen. He really wanted to do something. he's going to be your man. It's going to lead this program on this site.
Yep.
These guys over here, they kind of weren't interested so much. So again, those guys, they may not do that same role as well as he will.
Right.
So giving that positive feedback, again, it's part of a partnership. We don't have to do that sort of thing, but we do it because we say, hey, look, you want a success? Pick those guys there. I bet you've seen something similar over here.
Yeah, we see that a lot. And that's the thing is if you can force feed it down their throats and say, this is what has to get done, and you're going to get only so far. In order to get that momentum going, and again, the sustainable program, you have to have the right people that want to do it, that want to see some change. But they're also open to, it's not just a one solution that's going to solve everything. There has to be, trusting the different reliable technologies together and getting a good idea of what their technology or their equipment's telling them.
Absolutely. So, I think, again, we could go on for quite some time with these sort of things. And we're kind of only just brushing the surface of this. And I bet there's plenty of you out there listening right now thinking, I've got other ideas about how they do this as well. And you know what? If you have other ideas of how this is done, give me a shout. I'll happily get you on a podcast and we can have a discussion because, again, there's so many areas to it. But one thing I'm going to have to say at the end of this, before we finish as well, is coming up in October, on the 2nd of October this year, in the UK, we've got Talking Reliability Live. And we're going to be talking about all these sort of topic areas and subjects. You can sign up on our website, follow Jeremy and myself on LinkedIn and UE Systems on LinkedIn. We're going to be raising a Talking Reliability LinkedIn platform itself as well, so that if you have questions or you want to see certain topics discussed, put a message to us and we'll get it done. But Jeremy, thank you for joining me today on this. We've got a few more days of leading reliability to go through as well yet. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, take care and enjoy the rest of the week. Take care. Bye-bye.